All right, so today I've got my lovely wife, beautiful wife, Angel here, and we're talking about 10 years of marriage. It's been 10 years now. You know, we have 4 kids in 5.5 years, so it was 10 intense years, and we really got to know each other quite a bit. And so we did a video like this for our 6-year anniversary. We talked about what we've learned in 10 years, and so we wanted to redo it again for 10 years. And what's cool is we got this nice little home studio here where we're able to do this. So 10 years of marriage, awesome.
A few weeks away.
That's right. That's right. At the time of our recording, it's a few weeks away, but yeah, it's amazing, you know, just what we've learned. And I mean, I look at myself in a decade, how much I've grown and things I've overcome, and how much I know more about myself too through our marriage.
Definitely, I would agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, for those of you guys that don't know, we'll start with like how we met. Right? And kind of the process we took to get married.
Yeah,
and then we'll go from there.
And I'd refer all of you to listen to our 6-year longer version, because we went over that in good length in our previous one.
Quite a bit,
so
exactly.
Succinctly today.
Yeah, for sure. So we met actually on Christian Mingle, so it's a dating website.
Not my preference, but.
Not your preference, but you know, we were both 32 at the time. I was a busy entrepreneur. I tend to be more introverted, so for me to go up and, you know, introduce myself to somebody I see in the gym or something like that, it's just kind of awkward. Whereas dating...
And I've always worked with children.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so on a dating website, it's like you already know a little bit about the person. You get to see the bio, and you get to know a little bit about that person's personality, their values, and you know that they're interested in looking for somebody. And I think that was a big kind of first step. And so we found each other on there, and after a few calls, we went on our first date, although it wasn't a date, on July 4th.
We went as friends.
We went as friends.
That's right.
That's right. Because you didn't want to go on a date at that time.
I didn't want romance right away. I wanted to make sure he was a good guy with good intentions and that I felt safe with him.
Yeah. And so it was July 4th. We went out to lunch at a restaurant in Atlanta called R. Thomas, which anybody that's interested in health in Atlanta, I don't even know what they're doing now.
I don't know if it's there anymore.
Yeah, we haven't been there in a long time. But it was like a cornerstone place in Buckhead for people that were interested in health. They had like organic ingredients. They had this sauerkraut with every meal, pretty much had this like red cabbage sauerkraut. So you had like fermented food. You had grass-fed beef, which at the time when we first went out, I was trying to explain to you like, okay, this right here, this beef is grass-fed. And you were so new to the health world. You were interested in health, but you didn't even know what that meant. And there's a lot of people that, I mean, they just recently learned about the importance of grass-fed.
Right. Yes, I had no idea. I've always been into health. My journey of being educated has been a journey. Yeah. And when I met David, it was a pivotal moment in the journey. It was a radical, eye-opening, I don't know a whole lot. I have a lot more to unlearn and now relearn.
Yeah, absolutely. And
that's why he was open to dating me, because I had a teachable spirit that wanted truth more than being right or more than just assuming I was right.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's a couple things that I saw with Angel right away. Number one is she's drop dead gorgeous, of course, right? So she's beautiful, but she's also a beautiful spirit on the inside. And she was just so friendly and kind, like her eyes. And she was also real free. We took a walk after our meal, and she wanted to kick off her sandals. And we were walking, you know, on a sidewalk in Buckhead, in the middle of like a metropolitan city. We were walking on the sidewalk, and she was like, I don't want to walk with my sandals. I just want to go barefoot. Heels. Or your heels, or whatever you had on. Right?
We had the same conversation 4 years ago.
Oh, okay. And so she had high heels, and she wanted to walk barefoot. And to me, obviously, I know the health benefits of walking barefoot. Even if it's on concrete, you get the negative ions from grounding that will actually go through the concrete. But it was more of just the free spirit that I liked. Just she had kind of this free spirit, kind of embracing the moment and being free. And I really liked that. I was attracted to that.
And I mentioned in our previous interview where I took a year off dating prior to meeting David. And in that year, I did a lot of reflection, and I did a lot of just inner healing. I allowed God to heal me from the inside out and show me who he says I am. And during that time, I grew to love myself. And I grew confident. And so by the time I met David, I was ready for a man like him. I was ready to be pursued by a man that was an awesome, incredible man that would treat me well. So that's my encouragement. If anyone listening is single, take some time. It doesn't have to be a year, but take some time to let the Lord speak to you and to minister to you and to show you who you are and what your value is and what he's made you to do and be. And let that marinate with you for a little bit. And then you'll be ready for the type of person you want to do life with.
Yeah, that's a great word. Yep, absolutely. And so, we started dating, and after that was the first time was as friends, and then we started actually going on dates. And it wasn't long before I was like, I really felt strongly, this is the one. This is going to be the one for me. And we talk a lot about it in the 6th year anniversary video podcast that you can also listen to. But we moved quickly. Within 4 months, I proposed. So 4 months proposal, we were engaged. And at the time, you were living in an apartment, I was living in a house, but it was a small house. And we decided, okay, we're engaged, we're going to get married. We set the wedding for 4 months later. And we went ahead, we bought a new house, and I put my house up for sale and sold that house. So we moved her when we purchased the other house. I moved you out of your apartment and into the new house. Meanwhile, I was still living in my old house and putting it up for sale and kind of going through that process. Meanwhile, we're planning a wedding, and I'm running,
and we're both
businesses,
working.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly, we're both working. And so we went through that process. We got married March 7th, 2015, right? And so it was a whirlwind, right? So we'd only known each other for 8 months, got married. And
we had an argument when we were engaged concerning how long we would wait to start having kids. And I remember distinctly, we were at a rest stop from some road trip, and you were arguing for waiting 5 years to begin.
Right.
Granted, I was 33, I think, when we got married.
33, yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, no, let's wait 1 year. And it wasn't a real argument. It was more of a
discussion.
Yeah.
It was a discussion. Passionate discussion.
So God did not want either of our plans.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I grew up, I was one of 6 kids, and I have a relationship with all my brothers and sisters, but it was chaotic growing up, and my parents were very stressed. We had a lot of financial problems, and it was just stressful. And so I remembered that, and I remember thinking, wow, like, who would want to have a lot of kids? And I look back at that stage in my life, my early 30s there, my 20s, and I was and most people are, especially when you're single, very self-centered, right? And very narcissistic, right? And I think that was one of the great things that having kids, getting married and having kids did to me, was for me, it helped expose my own sin nature to focus on myself and myself being comfortable, secure, right? And really just living for myself and my own pleasures in a sense. And even though I was a Christian and I was doing good things and helping people, it's easy to just kind of get into this mindset of just thinking about yourself and what's going to make you most comfortable. And so to me, I thought having kids, maybe I'll have 1 or 2, but kids are just going to get in the way of me accomplishing my goals. That's how I used to think about life. And now we've had 4 kids, and it's amazing. I couldn't imagine life without any of them. And I'm so thankful I have had 4 kids. Yeah. And so, and you grew up as an only child, basically. And so you felt lonely a lot.
Right.
Yep. And so you thought having kids, that's going to make me, I'm not going to be lonely. I'm going to be around people all the time. It's going to be fun all the time.
I would daydream about the fun trips that I would take. I didn't think about the hard parts of raising kids.
Yeah, because it can be tough, especially, they're waking up at night.
It can be real tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we ended up having our twin boys 6 weeks after we got married. We conceived with them, and then we ended up, they came early. So in fact, Angel was on bed rest, because when you have twins, it's tough on the body. And so at, 32 weeks, you went on bed rest?
I believe so.
Yeah. And then they came a little bit early, 36 weeks.
Almost a day shy.
Yeah, a day shy of 36 weeks. So they actually came the same year we were married, December 31st. So we were married March 7th. They came December 31st. So we had known each other for a year and a half. And we were married with 2 kids. And no parenting experience. And twins are tough. Especially, just making sure that they're fed, I mean, imagine one baby, it's hit or miss. Like they're going to wake up at certain times at night. And so now you have two and let's say one is waking up on a certain kind of sequence of hours and then the other one wakes up at a different sequence of hours, just makes for more interruption. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was obviously very challenging, but we learned a lot about each other and how to communicate with each other and how to kind of step up and work as a team through all of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now they're 9-year-old boys.
Now they're great.
Yeah.
I mean, they've always been great.
Right.
But now they're easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Twins, I mean, I tell twin parents, I'm like, if you can get through those first 3 years, it gets a lot easier because they really entertain themselves, play together, built-in best friends.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, of course, we had our 2 daughters shortly after that, Joyful and Shine. And, now we're out of the baby stage. We still have one she's a little girl, but she's moving quickly towards becoming a big girl. So, yeah, it's moving into that kind of next stage of parenthood. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, the baby stage was busy in a physically demanding way, and now it's more scheduling busy.
Yeah, right. Sports, school, like different homeschooling.
Takes more intentionality out of it for me, and just I feel very busy.
Yeah, for sure. Because when they were 4 or 5, when they were like preschool age,
just fun stuff.
Yeah, yeah. You could just take them out to
do whatever, play dates, the park, little activities we were paying for, just random restaurants, whatever we wanted to do. Now it has to be more intentional.
Yeah, because now they have to learn their math. They've got to learn how to read. They've got to read a certain amount. They've got to write. And so there's a certain amount of work that they've got to be doing. And when you're homeschooling, it's on you.
Takes reps.
To do it.
Right.
You don't have a school or set curriculum like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And so some things we've learned, because we're very different people also. Mm-hmm. And so most people that listen to this podcast probably think I'm an extrovert, but I'm actually very much an introvert. If you get to know me, you know I'm an introvert. Introvert means that I'm good socially and I'm great with people, but I actually need a lot of time on my own to kind of process. Being around people takes energy away from me. Being by myself gives me energy. And you tend to be more extroverted, although you're becoming a little bit more introverted.
I know, right? Since being a mom, now I'm like, give me my space.
But in general,
I have some in me.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely more extroverted than you are.
Right. Because when you're around people, you really come alive. You really get a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you're also very much a verbal processor.
Very much so.
And I'm an internal processor. And so the difference there is she will talk as she thinks, whereas for me, I have processed, thought through things, then I talk.
So sometimes I may need to repeat things a few times to get the brain kind of syncing up, to have it make sense and be solidified in my mind. Where David's learned to just be patient with me as I process things out and repeat myself a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big thing that I had to learn, because naturally, by default, we assume everybody is like us. We assume everybody thinks the way that we do. So if like for me, if I'm an internal processor, I assume that the people around me, like you, would have thought through things before they talk, because that's what I do. And then with external processors, they don't do that. They talk as they think. And then they kind of assume other people will do that. And so a lot of times you'll say, well, what do you think of that? And I'm like, yeah, well, it's fine, right? And I'll say something like that. And a lot of times that means haven't really taken the time to think about it. It's kind of my way of saying, well, that's kind of a new idea. I don't know. I haven't thought about it. So I guess it's all right. It's fine. Because I need time to process it. And so, whereas there are times where you're talking because you're thinking as you're talking, and I'm like, why does she keep repeating herself? Or like, that's a crazy idea. Or And so over the years, I've had to remind myself, okay, she's just thinking and processing right now. It's not necessarily like, this doesn't mean that what she's talking about right now has been processed, and it's definitely a go. Like, this idea is a go.
And what we're discussing is probably the case with many couples.
Yes.
So some of these little things we're sharing may be helpful in your relationship, because we're not unique in this. There's many couples who are very different from each other. Another thing that I think we've come to realize more recently, maybe than our last video, if I'm not mistaken, when I want compassion, when I have something I want to share, if I feel like I went through something that was challenging, I want someone to listen and sit with me and then affirm, wow, that was tough. Or I'm proud of you, or something, just kind of sit there with me a moment. Whereas with David, that's not natural. For him, share kind of, you know where I'm going with this? The personalities.
For sure. Well, I'm a very masculine man. And by that, what I mean is I'm like a coach, an athlete. It's like, okay, you're gonna get better and stronger through this. And so like in my head, when I face adversity, that's how I speak to myself is, all right, this is gonna make you better and stronger. You're tough, you're gonna overcome this. And so a lot of times when Angel will share a challenge she's having, I wanna coach her in this almost kind of tough love. Like it's positive. It's like, okay, you got this, and try to encourage her. But what she really wants is more of the feminine, the compassion, sit with it, understanding the pain that she's feeling or the frustration that she's feeling, and take a moment and experience that emotion with her.
And then also not share your story in that moment.
Right.
And that's what we've realized. We think it might be a personality thing where some personalities relate by sharing their experience that might have had a similar type of experience. That's their way of relating.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, it feels like you're trying to one-up me. We've discovered this not too long ago, I think.
For sure, yeah. So some people, like, you'll explain, okay,
and it's not just in our relationship. It's helped me with other relationships realize, oh, they're not trying to one-up me. This is just their way of relating with me.
Right. So if Angel were, let's say she gets on a phone with a friend and she's like, oh, such a hard day at homeschooling. My boys weren't paying attention and I don't even think I can teach them. Like they're not really learning, or my daughter's not falling behind. And then if the person on the phone is like, oh, you know what? Me too. My kids, they're so hard at blah, blah, blah. Then she doesn't feel understood. Whereas if they take a moment and they say, you know what? I understand. That must be tough, right? And they just let her kind of talk and feel her pain. Then after that, they can say what they want. She wants to make sure, and I think it's your personality, and I think it's also part of the feminine is really desiring that compassion, right?
So we've discovered this in the last year or two, I think.
Yeah.
Haven't we?
Yeah, and so...
It's a newer thing.
Right, and this is really important for anybody in a relationship because we are very different types of people, and learning how to communicate the way that she needs it or the way that I need it is very important. But it's also very hard. It's like speaking a different language. And if you're refusing to do that because maybe pride, I know for parts of our relationship, I would have pride or almost like a self-righteousness, like, yeah, my communication style is so much better, kind of that sort of thought.
And I have too.
Yeah, and I think I think most people do. We have our own level of self-righteousness and pride.
Right.
And when we hold on to that, it creates distance in the relationship. And we actually are disrespecting the other person and the way that they really need to be communicated to. We're withholding love. And I think that's a really important thing people need to learn about. And if people really realize that, we would have significantly less divorce, conflict in relationships and marriages. Just giving person space to communicate the way that they need to and trying to understand as well as you can. But also at the same time, the person, like in my case, if you're not communicating to me in the way that I need it, I need to have grace for you.
Right, and vice versa.
Right, because it is a different language.
Also, I think that since our last recording 4 years ago, one thing that I've really become aware of and have tried to work on is giving you the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
I think that's been the root of a lot of our conflicts that we've had, is me not assuming you're in this with me. You're my partner. You want what's best for me, and we're in this together. It's me reading into what you've said at times and me not giving you the best assumption and assuming you're against me or you think you're better than me or you fill in the blank. But one thing that's been really powerful that I've been trying to work on this past year is giving you the benefit of the doubt and assuming you have my back. You may not be communicating the way I need you to or want you to, but you have my back most of the time. Obviously, you're not perfect, but you love me, and so you have my back.
Yeah.
I think that's been really, for me this past year, that's been really powerful.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And when you're in a relationship, you should always try to think that person has your back. It's just a communication. There's got to be a miscommunication. Whenever there's conflict, somebody's not hearing something right, or they're not seeing the other person's intentions properly, and there needs to be a lot of grace given to kind of cover that. I think that's super important.
Because most people who choose to do life together have the best intentions.
Yeah.
We just communicate and think so differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so, when it comes to like personality types, we're talking about how much different we are.
We're pretty much opposites.
Yeah. And so when it comes to the temperaments, because I know that's the personality traits that we like to talk about, right? It's the temperaments. And tell us more about the temperaments, the different temperaments.
Oh dear, I forgot the name of the author, but there's Kathleen, I believe.
Well, the author is not that important, but it's a color system, right? And so
there's this author that wrote a really great book. I said this, you said that, and you can look it up. I apologize, I can't remember. You can put it in your little notes in the video, just to give credit where it's due. But she wrote this little book study that I did with some girlfriends that was really life-changing for me. It really opened up my eyes, and she talks about how there's 4 quadrants of personalities, and we each have, or temperament she calls it, like our God-given temperaments, and we each have one predominant one and one secondary one.
Yeah, and so for me, I'm a red-green, meaning red is like the driver, very goal-oriented, very driven to accomplish things. And then the green is more of like a peacemaking type personality type. And so...
Which the author of the book would argue that those don't go together. But I think you learned green through life in order to succeed. But I think you're naturally a red. But at this point in your life, you identify secondarily with the green. And for me, I identify with the yellow, which is the sanguine. And the red is the choleric. And the green is the phlegmatic, I believe you pronounce it. So I'm a sanguine, which is yellow. So, but I identify secondarily with the blue, which is melancholy, which, again, those are opposites, and I'm not supposed to have that as a secondary. But I think in life and through my life experiences, I've changed, and that's how I think nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. And so yellow tends to be very attracted to fun and adventure, right? Reds tend to be
people-oriented.
Yeah, and people-oriented. And reds tend to be really focused on, I want to accomplish goals, habits, daily routines, tasks. And so anyways, her being a primary red or primary yellow, and me being a primary red.
I have this much red in me.
Yeah.
I don't like taking charge. I don't like being a red. And I have to pretend like I am every day when I homeschool, and it drains me of energy. I prefer to go with the flow, have fun, be whimsical and spontaneous, but that's not how life works.
Yeah. So one of the things that I love about Angel is she's so fun. Like when she's in her element, she is like the funnest person to be around. But it's also the thing that drives me crazy because she wants to have fun.
And that's the same.
And that gets in the way of me accomplishing my goals and tasks.
Right.
So sometimes the thing you love the most about somebody is
That's what I love in David, is you're such a strong leader. And I love that, because I don't like being a leader. I love it, but sometimes it annoys me because I'm like, chill out. Stop being so high-strung and demanding. Like, chill out.
Yeah, and so the thing you love the most can also...
Well, he's not demanding. That's the wrong word. Yeah.
But yeah, I can be very like rigid as far as like, okay, this is what I'm doing here, this is what I'm doing there, which is good when you're like, when we need to get things done, there's nobody that gets things done like I do, right? I get stuff done, right? And I'm not intimidated by things. There's a lot of strengths that I have. I'm not scared. I know I'm very self-confident, but at the same time, I'm not spontaneous and fun, right? And so I can be fun in moments, but...
You can be goofy.
I can be goofy for sure, but I like my routine and I thrive off of a routine.
Right.
So coming out of that to be spontaneous is not my personality type.
But we've rubbed off of each other.
Correct.
We've changed, and God has helped us both to be stronger in areas we used to be more weak, and vice versa. We're both growing to be more well-balanced people, I believe, in our marriage.
For sure. I think that's what marriage is supposed to do. It takes two people who are oftentimes opposites, and now they start to be able to relate better with each other, become less self-focused and self-righteous and more complementary, right? And honoring of the other person, right? And more well-rounded and balanced. And I think that's one of the great parts of marriage that help sanctify us, right? And so real powerful. And then, there's other elements to marriage as well. We all come in with a certain level of baggage and previous traumas. And those traumas oftentimes are really big triggers for fights in different relationship settings. Like for me, growing up, I would say the biggest trauma I had growing up was my parents went bankrupt. And I still remember my mom crying because one of our vehicles, the Jeep that she loved, was being repossessed. Like we couldn't pay for it. And so I remember at 10 years old seeing this. My parents, we lost everything. We didn't lose our family, so that was good. But we lost our physical possessions, right? The things that a house that we loved. And I saw how much stress that can bring. And so for me, anytime finances becomes an issue, like for me, I learned how to live very small and live well below my means. And then whenever finances becomes a little bit more of a stressor, it's a trigger for me, right? And so I always have to be aware of that, right? That I can be a little bit triggered by financial insecurity.
I think you've become much more self-aware the past few years.
Yeah, I mean, just even being able to talk about it like this, and I talk about it often. We talk about it in our relationship. The more you talk about things that trigger you, the more awareness you have of it, and the more that you can do. Right, not like a victim, but just saying, hey, I understand this as something that
God's still working on in me.
It's an area of weakness that God is working on, right? And it's developing almost like a level of mastery over it, where it's like when it starts to hit and trigger me, I can take a deep breath and say, no. It's going to be all right, right? Everything's going to be okay.
I think we're always on this pilgrimage and this journey, but there's milestone markers where we can look back and we can say, wow, I am so different than I was. Just like I can look back on our last video we did 4 years ago together, and I in many ways feel like I'm a different person. So it's in many ways I'm the same person, but in some ways I think that God has done so much sanctification in me since that time, and it's cool to look back and reflect, but God's always working on us and always chipping away at our edges and the places where we need to surrender, be more Christ-like.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a trauma that you had, do you want to talk about that? Like growing up, you grew up as an only child, and your mom, she had you at 18, right? And now you have a relationship with your dad, but you really didn't have a relationship with your dad growing up.
Yeah, I believe also there's generational things that are passed down, and until you get to that point of addressing that generational pattern, it's just going to be carried down. So I don't think it was only my life experiences. I think it was also beliefs that had been passed down generationally that affected me, but also my life experiences that you just mentioned. Being raised by a teenage mom. But God brought wonderful people into my life. But I think I had false beliefs as far as my self-worth and as far as being able to trust people, and just real hypersensitivity towards rejection. And that's something that the Lord has really had to help me. And just learning how to have authentically intimate relationships where you're known and where you know, and not just the good, but the deep parts. And that's something I didn't learn till later in life. And God has freed me and my family of the generational beliefs that were passed down. And every now and then I get a little triggered. Something might be said or done or whatever, where I might feel a little insecure about rejection or a lack of self-worth. I think those are the big things with me. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, and I've seen you grow over the years where things would trigger you and it would bother you for a day, a week, a long time, where you'd feel rejected, whether it was something I did, something your mom did, something that, somebody you looked up to as a friend or whatever. If somebody did something that you perceived as a form of rejection for you, it had a huge weight on you. And now I've seen that weight is lessened and lessened, that burden has lessened and lessened because you've become more aware of it. You're able to process it better, right?
Oh yeah, night and day difference. I feel like I'm walking in a lot more freedom, definitely, than I was 4 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the greatest things about marriage is that it exposes our pride, right? I think that pride is something all of us have. And of course, in our society, we'll say pride as a good thing. And there's some elements of it that are good. Like the good element what I would say would be our self-confidence. I think it's important to be a self-confident person, but pride really holds us back because it can push us into a self-righteousness.
God opposes the proud.
That's right, exactly. And what he opposes is self-righteousness, where we think, I'm better than these other people because I think this way. These are my political views. This is the way I communicate. These are, this is the way that I live my life, so I'm better than that person. And we judge other people because of that, right? And that separates us from God. And what God really wants is a surrendered heart. And I think in marriage, especially if you're married or in a relationship with somebody that you're a lot different than, this is the biggest thing I've gotten is, to me, it exposed my pride, right? Because not only do I have a strong accountability partner, right? And Angel, like Angel's not afraid to tell me what she thinks of me at certain times.
That's another little thing we've become more aware of.
Yeah.
Is if I critique something, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm angry, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's a big deal to me.
Yeah, right.
And people with my personality we just talk.
True.
Whereas for you,
it's a big deal.
It's a big deal if you say something. And so you and I have had to learn, I've had to learn to be less quick to speak if it's critiquing.
Right.
Quicker to think first, slower to speak, because he takes it more harshly than I intend.
I can take it personally.
Yeah.
The reason why is that for me, it's really easy to overlook little things. Like if I have friends that do little things that, perhaps are not, things that I would agree with, or things that I don't like, or even if when you do things that I don't like, it's easy for me to just kind of delete it. Like, all right, no big deal, no big deal, no big deal. It's kind of the thing that I say in my head, no worries, no big deal, right? And so it's easy to deflate it. So for me to actually confront something, it's got to be a big deal. So then I perceive other people as they're only going to confront things. Like she's only going to say something if it's a really big deal. Whereas for her, she's going to say something if it's a little deal.
And in 5 minutes, it may be nothing to me.
Right, exactly.
So I've had to learn to tame my tongue better. And he's had to learn to let things roll off his shoulders better. And remember, I'm not like him.
Yeah, exactly.
I talk just because
exactly.
I think something.
Exactly, absolutely. And also I've definitely had to learn how to be very sensitive when I do share things with Angel as well, because she's not a man, she's a woman, and she's, emotional, and I've got to be able to share it in such a way that it comes across with a lot of kindness, love, and respect, right? And sandwiched in with things.
Well, we both try to do that.
Absolutely. And so I think that's super important. But yeah, I would say the biggest thing that I have learned is how prideful and self-righteous that I was, and was not even aware of it. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things. Yeah. It's part of our sin nature, is that we carry this level of pride and self-righteousness within us. And it's actually challenging relational circumstances that expose it to us. And so a lot of times we might dread the challenging relational experience. And I mean, it's not fun to be in that with anybody, whether it's, a parent, a sibling, a friend, a loved one. But I think what we can get out of it is that there is a level of pride and self-righteousness that we may have, right? Even if we think we're right. In fact, actually, when we think we're 100% right, that is actually a sign that we are being prideful and self-righteous. So in our head, we'll think, this person is crazy. They're completely out of their mind, right? They are being so rude, or they're being, so disrespectful. And actually, that voice that's telling us that is our own pride and self-righteousness. It's actually separating us from God. And what really God wants is a surrendered heart. And that's the biggest thing I've learned is, hey, it's the first to forgive, right? The first to apologize. That demonstrates strength. Even if you feel like the argument was like 99% the other person, just taking accountability for the 1%, for the 0.1%, right? That you had in this. Maybe you didn't listen well, right? Maybe you jumped to a conclusion, right? Maybe you had an expectation that wasn't accurate or wasn't appropriate or put too much pressure on the other person. Take accountability for whatever it is, whatever part of that argument or that disagreement, take accountability for whatever part you played in it, and just surrender it. And just surrender it to God, right? And I think a lot of times, like I know in our relationship, especially early on, it was like there were parts of Angel I wanted to change, right? And the Lord reminded me, I can't change Angel. I have no power to change. In fact, the more I try to change her, the more she's going to repel against me. The more arguments, the more fight, the more fire is going to take place, and the more relational discomfort and discord is going to take place. But God can change her. But what God wants is me to change myself.
That's good.
Yep. If you're having an issue in a relationship, only God can change that person. But what you can do is help change yourself. You can give God the opportunity to help change your heart. And as you change your heart, the right person will start to change their heart.
Yeah, I saw one thing I've seen since our last video that was made 4 years ago is in our marriage, you have always been the one quick to apologize. Well, you weren't always quick, but you were always the first to apologize. And it didn't always come from a great place. It sometimes just came from okay, let's just get this argument over with. And it wasn't always a righteous place that you were coming from, but over the years, your apology became more sincere and more authentic, and I could feel it. And that shifted something in me, and now I sometimes see myself being the first one to apologize. Because your leadership has challenged me to swallow my own pride and recognize my own pride better.
Yeah.
That's something I've seen the past several years.
Yeah, I think that's just a beautiful thing. I think ultimately at the end of the day, what we all have to realize is that we're a work in progress, right? All of us, we are messed up people. You may be the highest achiever. I mean, I've achieved a lot in my life, grateful for it, but it's really all the good things about me are from God, right? And the negative aspects are what I hold on to. And so the more that we can surrender to what God's will is for our lives and in our relationship, gosh, the more peace and more connection we have in our relationship.
I would agree.
Yeah.
It's a good word.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yep.
10 years.
10 years. That's right. Well, cheers to 10 years. I know many of you guys have probably been married or in a relationship longer.
Cheers to 10 years.
That's right. And I'm sure we could learn a lot from you guys. So we're not gurus, but we just wanted to share things that, we've encountered and, challenges we've encountered. Our marriage is definitely far from perfect. It might look perfect, when we put up a social media post.
Right.
It's far from perfect.
Yeah.
And we're constantly, working and growing. And we ask for your prayers in our relationship. And we're praying for you in your relationship as well. We pray that you'll be able to celebrate decades and decades and decades of growth and lots of love in your relationship.
To God be the glory.
To God be the glory. And I love you so much.
And I love you.
That's right. All right. Well, that's all we have for you today. And we just wish you all the best. Obviously we talked mostly about nutrition and natural health, but you know what? Relational health is so critical to our overall quality of life and well-being. And if you're not having good relational health, it's hard to be healthy. It really is. And so taking the time to really prioritize good relational health, whether you're in a marriage, you're not, relationships with your friends, your family, just so absolutely critical. So hopefully you guys learned something from this and we're touched by it as well.
Yes.
Yep. We'll see you on a future podcast. Be blessed.
God bless.